everyone and welcome to another obscure Asian story.
우리 국민의 자유와 행복을 약탈하고 있는 파렴치한 종북 반국가.
On December 3, 2024, South Korean President Yoon declared martial law, citing threats from pro-North Korean anti-state forces. This was the first such declaration in over 4 decades, reminiscent of Chun Doo-hwan's authoritarian rule in 1980. South Korea, known for its capitalist growth and technological advancements, has a history of turbulent presidential leadership, with many presidents facing impeachment, being overthrown, assassinated, or jailed for corruption. This night marked another significant date in South Korea's complex political timeline. To understand what happened on the night of December 3rd to 4th, we will first explore who Yoon Suk-yeol is. Then we will examine what happened during that night, followed by a look at South Korea's historical issues with presidential leadership up to the present day. Finally, we will discuss the lessons that can be learned from these events. Born in Seoul in 1960, Yoon studied law and became a prominent public prosecutor and anti-corruption advocate. He played a key role in the conviction and impeachment of Park Geun-hye, South Korea's first female president, in 2016. The Conservative People Power Party, PPP, impressed by his work, convinced Yoon to run as their presidential candidate. He won the election in March 2022, narrowly defeating Lee Jae-myung of the Democratic Party. Yoon himself was a joker card. Yoon was known for his anti-corruption efforts against both Park Geun-hye and Moon Jae-in, which made him a folk hero. However, his actions against Moon's aide, Cho Kuk, led to backlash from Moon's supporters. The Moon administration appointed Chu Mi-ae as Attorney General to hinder Yoon's investigations. After a prolonged conflict, Yoon resigned and later became the Conservative Party's candidate. Yoon was not an established politician and lacked a strong base of supporters. He relied on an anti-Moon sentiments and formed an alliance with the younger conservative leader, Lee Jun-seok. Despite nearly losing the race, Yoon doubled down on Lee's anti-feminism rhetoric during the Shin-Chie crisis, which helped him secure a narrow victory. After his election, Yoon faced criticism for appointing ministers with corruption allegations, undermining his anti-corruption image. His nonchalant attitude when asked about his appointees' corruption allegations resulted in great disappointment. His term began with scandals, including the controversial move from the Blue House to a new complex, which caused logistical and financial issues. Within his first 3 months, he mishandled a flood crisis and faced backlash for blaming the victims. He also ignored Nancy Pelosi's visit during the China-Taiwan tensions to avoid angering China. After winning the election, Yoon Suk-yeol tried to remove Lee Jun-seok from party leadership. Despite reconciling with Lee during the campaign, Yoon was uncomfortable sharing power with him. This move backfired, causing his conservative supporters to turn against him and leading to a significant drop in his approval ratings. Yoon lost support from both swing voters and a large portion of the conservative bloc. Often referred to as a Korean Trump, Yoon was new to politics and many doubted his ability to govern effectively. After his election, he replaced politicians with his friends from the prosecutor's office. He also censored a cartoon that satirized him, which depicted him as a Thomas the Tank Engine-like locomotive, suggesting his wife had undue influence over the government. Many South Koreans felt that his wife, Kim Kon-hee, was acting as a president. Kim faced criticism for not paying taxes and taking kickbacks from hosting art exhibitions through her business, Kavana Contents. She was also accused of padding her resume and plagiarism in her academic work, prompting public apologies. A scandal erupted over allegations that Yoon and Kim exerted inappropriate influence on the People Power Party to select a candidate for a parliamentary by-election in 2022. Leaked phone conversations revealed that Myung Tae-kyun, an election broker, boasted about his influence over the presidential couple. Yoon denied any wrongdoing, but acknowledged Myung's help during his presidential primary campaign. The main opposition Democratic Party criticized Yoon's response, calling it arrogant and self-righteous. They demanded an apology, a reshuffle of top officials, and an independent investigation into his wife. The Democratic Party also released an audio file of a conversation between Yoon and Myung, suggesting Yoon provided political favors in return for free service. Yoon denied meddling in the candidate nomination process but admitted to asking a PPP committee to pick Kim Yong-sun for a parliamentary by-election, which Kim eventually won. South Korea's election law prohibits public servants from interfering in elections, but it does not apply to a president-elect, making it unclear whether Yoon violated the law. In 2023, a scandal emerged involving Kim Kyun-hee allegedly accepting a $2,000 Dior handbag, exceeding the legal gift limit for South Korean politicians and their partners. Questions were also raised about her undeclared expensive jewelry. Kim was linked to a stock price manipulation scam involving Deutsche Motors. She was cleared by the Seoul Central District Prosecutor's Office earlier this year, with prosecutors declining to indict her. The Democratic Party of Korea tried to pass a bill to appoint a special counsel to investigate Kim over the stock manipulation incident and their ties to a political power broker who has since been arrested. Yoon vetoed the bill 3 times, most recently last month. He apologized for the First Lady's behavior on national TV, but claimed she was unfairly demonized by the accusations. Yoon's mother-in-law, Cho Eun-sun, was sentenced to 1 year in prison for forging financial documents in a real estate deal and was released in May 2024. Earlier this year, Yoon faced a petition calling for his impeachment, which was so popular that a parliamentary website hosting it experienced delays and crashes. As I mentioned in a previous video, the doctor strike was also an issue for President Yoon and his government. Since February, junior doctors in South Korea have protested the government's plan to increase the annual medical school admission. Over 12,000 junior doctors, along with medical professors, have gone on strike, severely impacting the healthcare system. The medical community demands the Yoon government nullify its decision through the Education Ministry plans to expand the quota starting next year. Both sides are calling for renewed negotiations, but the government refuses to make concessions. After his party lost the local election, Yoon became the first president to skip the opening of the National Assembly on September 2nd, demonstrating his view of the DP-controlled legislature. Out of 300 lawmakers, 192 belong to the opposition, allowing them to pass bills, but President Yoon has used his veto power more than any other president in history. Throughout his presidency, Yoon has been involved in numerous scandals and has failed to fulfill many of his campaign promises. His economic policies have been questionable, with no clear direction since he took office. Voters have blamed his administration for food inflation, a lagging economy, and increasing constraints on freedom of speech. One instance of his alleged corruption was appointing his embattled defense minister, Lee Jong-sup, as the country's ambassador to Australia. This decision was made while Lee was under investigation for allegedly interfering in an investigation about a Korean soldier who drowned during search and rescue operations. Yoon Suk-yeol has emphasized freedom and democracy as core values for South Korea. However, his actions towards certain journalists and media outlets suggest otherwise, especially when they report critical stories about his government or family. And he had no qualms being vocal about his disdain for media. Yoon's clashes with the media began when MBC, a major broadcasting corporation in South Korea, reported his hot mic scandal during his visit to New York in September 2002, just 4 months after he took office. Since then, MBC has been labeled as a propaganda outlet reporting fake news by Yoon's government officials and supporters. Journalist organizations, including the International Federation of Journalists and the Seoul Foreign Correspondents Clubs, condemned the restrictions on MBC, stating that the government should treat all media with the same principles of access, regardless of the nature of their coverage. Police and prosecutors raided the homes and newsrooms of journalists accused of spreading fake news by the presidential office. Soon after taking office, Yoon created a new presidential office to fulfill his campaign promise of not working at Cheongwade, or the Blue House, South Korea's equivalent to the White House. Yoon's stated reason was to communicate more effectively with journalists and the public. Yoon Suk-yeol has been a lame duck president since the opposition Democratic Party won a majority in parliamentary elections this year and recently slashed his budget. In a televised address on Tuesday night, Yoon railed against anti-state elements plundering people's freedom and happiness. His office framed the imposition of martial law as a bid to break through legislative gridlock. However, using his political difficulties to justify imposing martial law for the first time in South Korea since 1980s is seen as absurd. Yoon acted like a president under siege. His decree temporarily put the military in charge, with helmeted troops and police deployed to the National Assembly building, where helicopters were seen landing on the roof. To understand what happened on that day, let's take a closer look at the night of December 3rd. Elite units under the Army Special Warfare Command, including the 707th Special Mission Battalion and the 13th Special Mission Brigade, received orders to prepare for isolated area activities. The 707th Battalion, a national-level counter-terrorism unit, conducts secret missions in wartime. The 13th Brigade's main mission is to eliminate North Korean leadership during wartime contingencies. The 707th Battalion received messages warning of a possible helicopter-based operation, stating the defense minister said that if a situation occurs, the 707th Special Mission Unit will be deployed, so prepare to deploy immediately. The head of the police agency was instructed by the presidential office to remain on standby, though he was unaware of martial law plans at the time. Rumors began circulating among journalists that Yoon would address the Democratic Party's impeachment motions against key officials and recent budget disputes. Broadcasters received urgent instructions to prepare for a live stream of an emergency government announcement.
북한 공산 세력의 위협으로부터 자유 대한민국을 수호하고 우리 국민의 자유와 행복을 약탈하고 있는 파렴치한 종북 반국가 세력들을 일거에 척결하고 자유 헌정 질서를
Yoon delivered a 6-minute televised address declaring nationwide emergency martial law. Defense Minister Kim Yong-hyun convened an all-commander meeting, instructing units to strengthen the readiness posture. The Democratic Party summoned its lawmakers to the National Assembly. PPP leader Han Dong-yoon criticized the martial law declaration as a wrong decision, vowing to stand and fight with the people. DP leader Lee Jae-myung called on citizens to gather at the assembly to defend democracy. Police blocked all entrances to the National Assembly. The Police Commissioner General called for an emergency meeting with senior officers. Lawmakers attempted to re-enter the assembly to pass a resolution overturning martial law. Some successfully bypassed the blockade, with DP leader Lee and Speaker Woo Won-shik climbing the National Assembly wall. Footage of the scenes, including protests outside the gates, quickly spread on social media. Crowds gathered chanting slogans such as "Lift martial law," "Take down the dictatorship," "No violence," and "Impeach Yoon." Yoon appointed Army Chief of Staff General Park An-soo as martial law commander, bypassing the higher-ranking chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. Park issued Martial Law Decree No. 1, effective retroactively from 11 p.m., banning all political activities nationwide. The decree prohibited political activities, rallies, and demonstrations, placed the press under control, and required medical personnel to return to their posts within 48 hours. As lawmakers confronted soldiers, opposition lawmakers rushed to get into the assembly to block the order. Some crawled through the legs of security forces, others clambered over fences and walls. Hong Ki-won from the Democratic Party scaled a 1.5-meter fence to enter the building, with protesters helping him over the wall. The National Election Commission reported that more than 100 troops armed with rifles were sent to its headquarters in Gwacheon, Gyeonggi Province. About 10 martial law troops entered and confiscated the mobile phones of 5 officials on duty and restricted anyone from entering or leaving the building. Minor opposition to Reform Korea Party lawmaker Cho Kuk urged the National Assembly to pass a resolution repealing martial law and to impeach Yoon. Foreign Minister Cho Tae-yul convened an emergency meeting with top officials. Cryptocurrency markets plunged following the martial law declaration, with exchanges reporting access delays. Seoul Mayor Oh Se-hyun monitored the situation from his office and summoned an emergency meeting. The military ordered all battalion-level commanders and above to remain on standby. Armed military helicopters were seen flying over the National Assembly, prompting lawmakers and aides inside the building to build barricades using furniture. Reports of potential military involvement spread. Martial law troops entered the National Assembly grounds and barricaded the main entrance within 10 minutes. Martial law troops broke windows and entered the National Assembly building. Breaking news reports detailed dramatic scenes, including a gun momentarily pointed at a resisting lawmaker, aides using fire extinguishers to push back troops, and soldiers running through the building. The National Assembly Secretariat later released footage of the incident. DP lawmakers claimed that martial law troops had specific orders to target and arrest high-profile politicians. DP leader Lee Jae-myung, PP leader Han Dong-hyun, and National Assembly Speaker Woo Won-sik. The speaker convened a plenary session. Additional military helicopters were mobilized. In an unanimous vote, all 190 lawmakers present approved a resolution demanding the repeal of martial law. Reports indicated that 172 lawmakers were from opposition parties, while 18 were from the ruling PPP, allegedly from a fraction aligned with Han Dong-hyun. The resolution cited Article 77 of the ROK Constitution, which mandates that the president must repeal martial law if a majority of lawmakers demand it. Party leaders quickly declared the martial law nullified due to a lack of justification. Despite the resolution, reports indicated a brief standoff between martial law troops and parliamentary aides. Aides informed the troops of the resolution and reminded them of the constitutional consequences of non-compliance. Signs of troops' withdrawal followed, the police authorities also beginning to disperse around the National Assembly gates. Speaker Woo formally notified Yoon and the Defense Ministry of the resolution to repeal martial law. However, the Defense Ministry announced it would maintain martial law operations until a presidential order was issued. The Joint Chiefs of Staff confirmed that all martial law troops had returned to their bases. By 4:30 a.m., Yoon was back on TV in front of the same blue curtains, saying he would withdraw martial law. But this would only be made official, he said, when he could assemble enough of his cabinet to lift the order. The announcement was met with cheers outside the assembly. In the hours before dawn, more people emerged from the building from behind the barricades they had haphazardly put together. With holes in the doors and broken windows, the stately building already bears scars of the night when South Koreans saved their democracy. Schools, local businesses, and banks opened as usual on Wednesday morning, and flights continued to land uninterrupted in South Korea's buzzing capital. But public anger and the political fallout was not spent. As the sun rose on Wednesday, thousands gathered to call for Yoon's resignation. This event once again highlights South Korea's struggle with authoritarianism and political turmoil. Yoon's attempt to declare martial law and the subsequent backlash reflect the ongoing tension between democratic principles and authoritarian impulses in South Korea, impulses that Korea has been facing for over 70 years. This is easy to see when we look at all of Korea's past presidents. South Korea's first president Ri governed autocratically and forced to resign in 1960 due to massive protests. His successor Yoon Po-sun was overthrown by a military coup led by Park Chung-hee in 1961. Park ruled with authoritarian control until his assassination in 1979. Chae Kyu-ha became president but resigned amidst the Gwangju uprising in 1980, leading to Chun Do-won's coup. Chun stepped down in 1987 and was later sentenced to death, commuted to life imprisonment, and eventually pardoned. Woo Tae-woo, elected through South Korea's first direct presidential vote, was sentenced to 70 years in prison for corruption. Kim Yong-sam, despite his anti-corruption agenda, faced concerns over his own improprieties. Kim Dae-jung faced a cash for summit scandal involving $500 million paid to Pyongyang. Woo Myo-han faced impeachment and economic challenges leading to his tragic suicide in 2009. Lee Myung-bak was sentenced to 15 years in prison for corruption. Park Geun-hye was impeached and jailed for a corruption scandal involving her confidant. Moon Jae-in was the first president in a long time not charged with corruption or impeachment. Now Yoon Suk-yeol faced scandal after scandal and even declared martial law. Martial law was last declared in South Korea in 1979. Since becoming a democracy in 1987, it hasn't been used. President Yoon, elected in May 2022, has struggled with low approval ratings and opposition control. During his campaign, Yoon praised authoritarian General Chun Do-won for his effective governance despite suppressing pro-democracy activists. Rumors of him considering martial law have circulated, but there's no justification for it. South Korea values the rule of law and democracy, and past presidents facing prosecution shows that no one is above the law. Historical factors have influenced the presidency's power, but corruption is not tolerated. His approval ratings have plummeted to around 17%. This appreciation comes from their experiences with dictatorship and the importance of maintaining a democracy. South Korea's presidents often face corruption and abuse of power due to the imperial presidency and informal networks. Historical factors like the Korean War, national division, and a centralized security state have influenced this. Political parties were under-institutionalized, with leaders using them for personal ambitions. presidents going to prison is good for South Korea. It shows that no one is above the law and that corruption is not tolerated. Koreans value the rule of law and national dignity, calling out corruption even among their leaders. Even after democratization, the presidency remains powerful and even progressive presidents have used their office's power. Today, South Korea has a mix of centralized presidential authority and democratic practices. While informal networks continue to operate, democratic practices are less amenable to corruption. This ongoing tension keeps South Korea's politics contentious. In many countries, pardons are granted by the legislature or with the support of the Supreme Court. However, South Korea uses pardons for political reasons more than most democracies. Presidents use pardons for self-preservation, setting a precedent for leniency. They are influenced by power dynamics within the political elite. Pardons can also placate voters. President Yoon, a fan of Lee Myung-bak, pardoned him and others to unify his conservative party. However, this can undermine faith in institutions. This practice began when Chon Do-han and Roh Tae-woo were sentenced to prison in 1996. Park Geun-hye, sentenced to prison in 2018 for bribe-taking and abuse of power, was pardoned by her successor Moon Jae-in in December 2021. Yoon still portrays himself as a crusader for justice. Yet downplaying and justification of his spouse's misconduct, Yoon's image as an uncompromising prosecutor is gone. When misconduct implicates his family, he operates differently. This was evident when Yoon twice vetoed a bill seeking a special counsel inquiry into allegations against his wife, despite overwhelming public support. Since taking office in May 2022, Yoon has emphasized freedom, the rule of law, and human rights. However, the rule of law can only thrive when everyone, including the leader and his family, is held accountable to the same standards and laws. To avoid these situations, South Korea could consider a parliamentary system. If Yoon Suk-yeol were prime minister, he would have been removed from office when his approval rating dropped to 17%. A parliamentary system could resolve conflicts between the executive and legislative powers. However, this requires media independence and judicial separation, which is not the case under Yoon. So, what do you think? Should Korea change its system and impeach the current president? At least we know what the Korean people want. I hope you enjoyed this video. See you next time and thanks for watching!